uh, in today's training, I'm going to be going over the secrets of effective texting. And this is in particular in relationship to marketing automation. If you're not using marketing automation, then this wouldn't be as interesting for you in some ways. You can still do some of the stuff we talk about, but with marketing automation, you really can transform your business to become something very productive. And so I'm going to be talking about how you can use texting to improve sales conversion. So getting that person who's raised their hand and showed some sort of interest to become a paying customer. Where these same tactics also work for customer retention and ultimately greater profit, because that's ultimately the point of being in business, is creating profit in order to create freedom, which means time, autonomy, being able to live life on your terms. I read a recent email from one of my friends, Troy Broussard, and he talked about kind of the myth of entrepreneurship and how many entrepreneurs spend 80 hours a week working. And the whole guise is that we go into business so that we can have freedom, and yet we become slaves to our own business. And what I want to share with you today is actually kind of the secret to getting that freedom and that autonomy by utilizing processes that leverage good communication. Because ultimately, that's what business is all about, is communication. And you kind of will see this as we go through this little list. You guys have hopefully seen this already. We're going to talk about why texting is 10 times more powerful than email when used correctly. Probably should have highlighted correctly, because that's the key word there. A lot of people screw it up, but those that use it correctly actually get the benefit. How to immediately increase profits with the most powerful text message you can send to a new prospect. I normally like to shy away from like over exaggeration, but this is actually spot on. There is one single type of text message. I'm actually going to give you a formula for writing it that, if you use it, will dramatically decrease your time to sell, meaning from prospect to customer. The shorter that distance, the faster you can grow your business and the more effectively you can grow the business. So I'm going to show you a text message that actually compresses the sales cycle. I'm going to show you how you can double your conversions with one text. Interestingly enough, it's the same text, so that's good. One stone, two birds. Who doesn't like that? I'm going to talk about the common element of all customers who buy. And if you understand this concept, it really opens all sorts of mental doors for you and can make things much more effective across all mediums. I'm going to show you how to quadruple the number of people you talk to on the phone with a single text message. This is only getting more important as technology is going forward, and I'll show you a really clear example of this. There's something, you know how there was that big, huge tsunami that hit like India, West Indies there, or I think it was India, right? And you just have this wall of water, and people are looking at it going, what is that? And then it hits them. Well, right now there is a big, huge wall coming at everybody who sells by phone. And a lot of people aren't aware it's even showing up, and they're not going to know it till it hits them. You're going to get a preview right now of what that wall is that's coming. And this is a really recent development, but it is going to be catastrophic to many businesses that have not adjusted. So you being on this training right now is not just serendipitous. It could be a big deal, especially if you sell by phone, which is one of the more powerful ways where we can do some sales, even if it's not all of our sales. So I'm going to show you how to quadruple the number of people you talk to on the phone with a single text message. And we'll talk about some other strategies to make sure that that's even more effective. We're going to talk about how to get prospects to give you their mobile number. We're going to give it to you willingly. We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about the most powerful use of texting that most people are avoiding. And this last one is why I really started doing this training every week, is because we know too much about how to do texting effectively, and there's a lot of people running around teaching people the exact opposite of what actually produces results. And so we're going to get into that. I don't think any of these things are going to blow your mind and you're like, oh, I never even thought of that. Most of it will be common sense to you. Once you hear it, you'll go, well, of course. But you may not be doing it, and that's kind of the point. So really briefly, if you didn't already know who I am, I'm one of the co-founders of Fix Your Funnel and Yeti Text and some other company softwares that all focus on texting for marketing automation platforms, you're probably a fixture funnel customer. And we integrate obviously with Infusionsoft. I've written 3 books. My first book was the little one that looks like a cartoon book, Would You Like to Go Big? But it's really about upsells and how to do them effectively. Because when Fixture Funnel started, that's what we first started doing, was one-click upsells for Infusionsoft order forms. And so that book I wrote just to teach all of the concept. For some reason, and I can't explain why, I had the good fortune of interacting with a lot of very successful people in online marketing and marketing in general. And I had this opportunity at the time I was creating the one-click upsells to be able to ask a lot of people some questions about what they were doing. And then, of course, our one-click upsell solution is sold by this point probably close to 100 million in extra upsells for people, maybe more than that, because I have one customer that does way more than that every year. So, but at any rate, that was my first book. My next book was How to Fix Your Funnel, which actually had nothing to do with texting and had everything to do with how do you figure out what your business is trying to communicate to you about how it wants to grow. I think of a business much like a tree. It wants to grow, and how big? As big as it can. And how big it can grow is largely dependent on you as a business owner and your ability to listen to it and respond. And so that's How to Fix Your Funnel. Both Would You Like to Go Big and How to Fix Your Funnel are available for $5 on Amazon. I'm not trying to make money with those. I'm trying to educate people so they can avoid some of the pitfalls that I had to navigate around as an early business owner. The final one is actually really related to what we're talking to today, which is the messaging connection. And that is how to increase profits by connecting with people in the way they want, which is all about what growing a business really is. Sales and marketing are just communication, and they're communicating effectively. And so when you learn how to text effectively, you're facilitating the sales and marketing aspects of your business. So at any rate, so I am an author, also a business owner, do fairly well. But now I want to go back to this chart right here. This chart tells a very interesting story, and it's a story a lot of people are not aware of. I like to bring your attention to this before we start getting into effective texting, just so that you can understand how the world has maybe shifted around you. I think you probably have a good intuition about this, but I want to share some numbers and point out some details so you really understand how your experience has impacted you, probably negatively, and you may not realize it. So this chart shows PC sales versus smartphone units. And what you'll see is that long red line kind of, I'm sure at the time, PC like Dell and, Gateway and all the different other computer manufacturers, they were making tons of money. They were selling a lot of computers, and they felt like those were great numbers. But if you see that blue line that represents smartphone sales, and you recognize that a smartphone today is 10 times more powerful than a desktop computer of 2005. They're so much faster. What this does, it just shows you how big this smartphone thing has been. But what's even a bigger deal is that in order for someone to get onto the internet pre-2007, they had to do that on a computer. So what limited people's ability to be online was the hardware. If you didn't have hardware to get online, you couldn't use the internet. And so when Trent and I started our first company together in 2007, that was a success. It really was following that little line from 2000. You guys can look back at 2007, and you can see the computer sales one. And you can see how computer sales are kind of flatlined, but they were at 2.7 million. There's about almost 1 billion people online at that time, I guess. Or no, actually it was 295 million at that time. Sorry, I gave way too generous numbers that were online at that time. And we did pretty good with our business. It was all driven off of email. We sent a ton of email, a lot of different ways, hopefully all of it legal, but we sent a bunch of email. And through those emails, we drove a business from 0 to 1.3 million in 12 months. It would go on, I think it topped out at around 3 million, but it was a good business. It was the first business I had done that was actually really successful. And it was because I had just learned about marketing automation and direct response marketing. So I coupled those things. But really, we were super limited by who was online. Now, fortunately, the industry we're serving was mostly online, so that was good. But our opportunity was really limited by that. Now you can see this chart ended 4 years ago, so it's not really a great representation, but 4 years ago, already 1.4 billion devices in 2015 had been sold. That just gives you an idea of how smartphones had introduced a whole lot more people online. Well, today, okay, I guess I forgot to put a few things on there. Okay, so you have the age of the PC internet. That's what most of us have actually acclimated to. And so the way that we see the world is largely dependent on this experience we've had of using computers. In fact, most of you probably use a computer more than a smartphone most of your day for your work. Some people are starting to adjust towards using just mobile devices, maybe an iPad and their phone, or some tablet in their phone. But most people that are in our industry, meaning small business, still use heavily the PC. So we're using either a Mac or a Windows machine. There's a few outskirters there that use Linux, but everybody's on a desktop for the most part as they're designing their marketing flows, as they're creating their marketing messages, as they're typing up stuff. There's very few people using their thumbs to do all that. And because of that, we tend to see the world through that lens, and we sometimes forget that much more people are using their mobile phone. For many people, they don't even have a computer anymore. For many people, all they have are these mobile devices. And so today, there are 4 billion smartphones in use on the planet. Now, that number, we say it easily because it's 4. That's a small number, right? Billion, we've all heard that before. But if you really think about it, that will boggle your mind that we have over 4 billion people with smartphones and over 5 billion people that have internet access today. So that just gives you some idea of, and when I say internet access, it's in some limited form. Some of them are using feature phones, but there's 4 billion smartphones. And the way those break down is 1 million roughly iPhones and 3 million Android phones. Now in the United States, Canada, UK, Australia, it's about 50-50, 50% iPhone, 50% Android. Those are statistics that are important for you to understand and know. And obviously, there's a little bit of skew in those numbers in terms of who has them. But for the most part, you just know 50% are Android, 50% are iPhone. The demographics, there's some correlation with device type, but it's not, rigid. There are very wealthy people that still use Android. And there are kids that are 13 years old that have an iPhone. So there's a big diversity, but you need to understand those two numbers. Those are important. But what that also says is everybody in 2019 that wants to have a smartphone probably does. And so that's probably nearly 100% of your marketplace. There used to be an age disparity, so maybe people that were older don't have smartphones. They have smartphones too. They may not know how to use them completely. If you get up into the, late 70s to 90s or whenever people pass, they may not use it fully the same way that the younger demographic does, meaning 74 and under, but they still have them. And so everybody everybody you're trying to market to, everybody you're trying to sell, most likely has a smartphone. And that's important for you to understand as we go forward. Because of this, and I put this here so it'll remind me to just emphasize how important texting is in this whole thing, because there are a lot of apps, there's a lot of way to message people. Mostly when it comes to messaging outside of texting, we're talking about somewhere where one person holds the ball. They own the court. So if at any point in time they don't like you, they take the ball away and send you home. That's not true with texting. It's not true with email. And that's why those two mediums tend to be very important, phone numbers and email addresses, for marketing automation, because they're places where you don't have to have somebody's permission to play for the most part. There are always rules to the game. We're going to talk about those rules and how they're formed and where people have made mistakes and how you can avoid them. But you want to open the door to texting as soon as possible. Now, I could rattle off stupid statistics like a lot of people do about, 97% open rate. And, you just know from personal experience what you do when you get a text message versus email. And I think that's sufficient for you to understand. And you probably wouldn't be on this if you didn't understand how important texting was, but you really got to open the door to texting. And when I say open the door to texting, I'm not talking about just legally. So there are legal requirements for texting. You should not be texting anybody that did not give you permission to text them. Permission is granted in one of two ways. The ideal way is that they text you first. And that's what we're going to talk about, as being the dominant way that you want to be thinking about opening the texting channel. The other way is the way that you would collect emails normally, which is, have somebody fill out a form. If you do fill out a form, have a form that people fill out and they put in their phone number. There's a couple of things that you got to be aware of. The first one is people type in things wrong. They don't type them in the proper way that you need them in order to be able to text them through code. And so this can create issues. And so there's some things that you need to be aware of with that. The other one is you need to have a checkbox that says, yes, it's okay to text me. And not in that specific verbiage, but in some verbiage that's making it clear to them that you will be texting them. Because, and this is why I say psychologically, not legally. Legally, you can put some stupid text in there that sounds real legal and is off-putting, and then they check that box and then you're good. Psychologically, we want to think about, we want this to be something that they're welcoming, not dreading. And so that's what you want to be thinking about as you open the door to texting. How do I open the door in a way that psychologically is welcoming? The final point on this is email is on the phone, but you guys all know how hard it is to get your emails read. It is not uncommon for people to have tons of unread email, and it just becomes overwhelming to them. Some people are on top of it. They keep on top of it, but in order for someone to stay on top of email, they become very militaristic. They're very rigid in their rules. And so if anything even shows up that looks close to not what they were interested in, they mark it as spam and it's gone. So understand, email is not going to get easier. Emails are going to only get harder. And the reason it's only going to get harder is because spam has gotten even worse. You thought it couldn't get worse, and then it does. And so email service providers are employing some pretty amazing rules. Last week, I had the opportunity to talk to some people from SendGrid, which sends 3.9 billion emails a day. And they send email to that many unique senders. So they may actually send more than that per day. And some very interesting conversations about what email service providers are doing to prevent you from being able to email their customers. And believe me, you need to understand that. We'll talk briefly about that throughout this, since we're primarily focusing on texting. In texting, the world's a little different. I'll get into that in the Q&A section a little bit so that we don't distract too much from the message of what we're talking about here, but there's some neat developments going on. So as far as I'm concerned, there's three areas that you're going to be thinking about. The first place where you're probably going to start making adjustments is in campaigns. So we call those campaign messages. The next is automated conversations. And the final one is live messaging. This one is the most important. I probably should have saved that for suspense until the end, but I want you guys to know that is the most important. The first two are setups for the last one. So we do automated conversations because it's the most effective way to psychologically open the door for texting. That is where someone texts a keyword to your phone number, and then it does a little automated thing to gather some initial information. We do that to open the door for live messaging. Campaign messages, their only purpose is to start live messaging. So if you do it any other way, you're missing the real benefit. That's where all the money is. So that's what we're going to get into. So we're going to start with campaign messages because this is where most people will start. By the way, if you have any question, I don't care what the question is. There's no dumb questions in my mind. There's only questions of trying to understand better. So if any question comes up whatsoever, go ahead and ask it when it comes up. Don't worry about timing because I won't let it interrupt anything, and I will catch it and I'll answer it. Okay. So any question that comes up, ask it, because I'm covering this as someone who has been doing this for a long time. So that means I'm probably going to assume too much. So I want you to ask questions. So the first thing that I recommend when someone's getting into texting and they want to do it effectively is start looking at their email-only campaigns and ask the question, where could I start sending text messages in this campaign? And I'm going to tell you about the three types, the three dominant types that you should include in an email-only campaign to make it multimedia. But that's the first question is, do I have a primary campaign that I use where most of my people are flowing through? And is it principally email? I want to start opening the door for text. And if I do, where do I want to start inserting text messages? The three types that you want to be thinking about. And again, remember that it doesn't matter what you send. It only matters on what they consume. if a prospect or a customer does not consume your message, then there's no change of their view of the world. If there's no change of their view of the world, they continue to do what they did before. You have to introduce new information that is compelling to get somebody to see the world differently in order for them to make different choices. We're just really creatures of habit more than we'd like to admit, and we do the same things over and over again based on what we see, the way that we understand the world works. And so we got the whole secret of marketing, the whole secret of sales is introducing new information that changes the way that they see the world. And the only way that happens is if they consume content, not if we deliver content. This is a mistake a lot of people make as they get into marketing automation. Having been in this little world for a dozen years, I've noticed that a lot of people fall into that trap. So understand the first step is to get consumption. So this is why content delivery text message is really important for you to start working into your campaigns, is because emails, if we take our best case scenario, and this is a real tight-knit group where I'm giving really good value every time I send an email, we're looking at about 50% consumption. That's like the top of the line. There are some rare outliers where people will get up into 70 and 80%. But even if you have a really good reputation, you're only getting maybe 94% delivery. And then out of that, most of that email is not going to be seen, those few that are. So that's really terrible. If you got 100 people to say, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing, and maybe if you're just top of the line, 50 of the 100 people are getting what you're delivering to them. That's really bad. And that's why a lot of people have given up on delivering stuff through email, and they try and just do it on the thank you page. And that encourages a lot of different things too. But at any rate, content delivery is the first type of text message we want to do. And we're thinking of a link to a video, a PDF, or a resource. You could also do what's called an MMS if you're in the United States or Canada. In that case, you could actually send an image of a resource. That's a really interesting method and approach that a lot of people have been using successfully. And I'll get into that in the Q&A and why that's such a powerful way. But the MMS with the image is pretty neat. But the link to content is also very powerful. And I usually do that because I can track the tap on that link in the text message and use that to then inform the rest of my marketing campaigns. So here's an example of one that we might do. It's Bill. Here's a link to a video. Bill's obviously the name I always use when I think of writing something to somebody. I think we have a Bill in the group today. But here's a link to a video on how top Infusionsoft users are using Slack. And I got the link. And then this little gem here, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now, what's really important to understand about texting is predominantly a two-way communication tool. It has always been that way until companies started taking it on text messaging. So understand that the nature of the media is where you need to play with it. If you don't utilize it in the way that it's intended to be used, something feels off for the recipient. And whenever something feels off for the recipient, they back off. It's part of the way that our brains and our psyches work. If something seems off, we step away. That's what keeps us safe. And so that's why we do it. And if you don't use the media right, then that will happen. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Is a weak version of initiating conversation. I'm going to get into a more powerful one, but that's one way you can do it if you're delivering content. So a little explanation of what the link is going to give them, the link, and then an invitation for them to respond and give you their insights on what you're sharing with them. This is a dialogue that's going on. The next type is a conversation starter question related to the campaign content. This is one of the most exciting things to me about marketing automation is we always have context. We're never kind of in the dark about why is this message being sent to this person now. There's always like a tag or a form or an order or something that triggers this campaign. So we always know context. And so with that context, it puts us in a great position to start a conversation. And this will double your sales conversations or conversion, or it will double your sales conversations, which leads to conversion. But this is an example of one that is related to my first example, which is I sent you a video on how to use Slack with Infusionsoft yesterday. What did you think? You'll notice that is not hard, right? All you're thinking about is, okay, if I were in the shoes of the prospect and somebody had just sent me something, what would be a natural question that they might ask me related to the content that they sent me? And you know what the fun thing about texting is over email? It's short, so you don't have to think about writing a novel. You don't have to think about being super compelling. All we're doing in texting really is we're trying to start conversations. So that's all we're thinking about is how could I start a conversation given the context of this situation in which I'm going to be sending the message to the person in the first place. Now, what if they didn't watch the video? Can I still send this text message? Yeah, in fact, this text message actually becomes more effective at that point because it is implied that you watched the video, and so it may actually cause you to go watch the video so that you can respond to the question of what did you think? The other thing you'll notice about the what did you think question is it is fully open-ended. So when I was a kid in the 6th grade, I was part of this little video crew, and we went around videotaping the teachers and doing interviews with them for some video we were going to show the whole school. And we went to one of the teachers and said, how do you like working here? Or do you like working here is the question we asked. And our video teacher heard about it, and she pulled us in and said, never ask that question. And we're like, why? They're like, well, it's not an open-ended question. It puts people on the spot. They have to answer a particular way because of politics. So they couldn't say, no, this place sucks. And so you put them in an awkward spot where they can only give the answer that you want to hear. So ask an open-ended question because people want to be right. And if you don't know this about yourself, you probably want to be right too. There's very few people I've ever met that actually want to be wrong. Everybody wants to be right. They want to figure things out. They want to know what's going on. They want to feel like they know their place in the world, and they want to be right. And so when you ask a question like, what did you think? The neat part about that question is there is no right answer, so they can always be right. There's no wrong answer either. And so that's a great kind of question to ask because it is more inviting than a question where they have to give a particular answer. And in sales and marketing, we don't want a particular answer. We want the truth because the truth will help us to know how to move them from where they are to where they need to be. So another example is the example that comes at the end of an automated conversation. I'm going to give you an example of an automated conversation, kind of break that down in just a moment. But this one is a really secret one. And if you can't see it, I'm going to show you the actual formula that is in this question, and it is great. I'll email you the link to the book. So this is an automated conversation. If you text learn to 949-835-5300, you can get a digital and an audio copy of my book, The Messaging Connection. And so the last part of that conversation, I say, great, I'll email you a link to the book. By the way, why did you request the book today? So I did a couple things here. I'll just point them out real quickly. This is also the third type wrapped into the second type, is I referenced an email. Now, why is that good? Because email consumption, email interaction, engagement is a huge signal to email service providers that your email is worth sending and worth delivering. So you want that engagement. So that first one is I'm referencing a link in their email. So that's going to get them to hopefully go in their email, dig through that mess and find my email and engage with it. But I also did a question. I said, why did you request the book today? There's actually a formula in this, and it makes it really easy to ask great conversation starter questions no matter what. And I'll break it down for you in just one second. But the last type of text message you can send is a reference to an email sent. And so here's another example of one is, Bill, it's Ryan from Fix Your Funnel. Because you asked about texting, I just sent you an important email. Let me know what you think. Again, I'm using I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you think. What did you think? That kind of concept, you can see that kind of pattern there as a method for engaging them in conversation. But I'm also referencing an email so that they'll go find my email, open it, and then get engagement, which will be a signal to the email service provider that my emails should be delivered because they're actually engaged with. And that's something that email service providers are looking for with machine learning right now. So that's why that's really important for you to do. So all three of those are three I'm thinking about as I look at my email-only campaign. I'm thinking about, okay, where am I currently delivering content that might be good for me to just deliver it through a text message? Where have I given content and now it would be a good time to find out the pulse of the person? How are they engaging with that content? What do they think of it? How have their thoughts started to change? And one of the interesting things about questions is we actually think in questions. And you may not have realized it, but your brain just did an analysis on that and said, do we think in questions? And then you gave either a yes or no feeling. And it was done so quickly, maybe you didn't even perceive it. But we think in these questions. And when you introduce a question in a text message, even if the person doesn't text back to you, they have answered that question in their head. And so it is a little bit sly, but it's a way of you to actually introduce questions and concepts into their brain. Even if they don't respond, you've got them processing. And that processing actually starts to change the way that they view the world. And so those questions can be really critical. But this question right here is the most important one. And here's the formula. This is the most important text message for new prospects. Also works great for, people who are customers that need to be return customers or whatever. Is as you deliver some sort of message, you want to use the conversation conversation starter question formula of why did you, and then whatever they just did. That's it. Now you can get more specific as you have better context, but as you're getting started, just write down why did you ... question mark. That is the formula for a great conversation starter question. We've been using this for years, and the people that are having the most effective use of text messaging have been using it for years. And the reason that this is so powerful is because it's so easy to do. Why did you is just asking for motivation. Whatever your motivation is right. Again, this is not a question you can get wrong. Why did you? And it could be something nonchalant. They could say, oh, well, just curious. Great. That tells you as a marketer, as a business owner, so much about their scenario, their situation. It could be, well, we just lost a client because we couldn't get a hold of them. And I know if we would have had texting, I'm using my use case, right, that it would have helped us. So that's it. Or, I've been knowing that mobile is important, but I haven't figured out what to do yet. And so I wanted your book. So whatever it is, that answer tells you something about where they are and can help you to prepare them for making a buying decision. So this question engages people in conversation. And this is, I think I mentioned it before, but I'll say it very explicitly now. All sales happen in conversation. All sales. Now, the person will frequently, at this point, if they're contrarian, will tell me, well, what about people that just go to your website and buy? There's already been a conversation that has occurred. That conversation wasn't maybe with you or members of your business, but there was a conversation that occurred in order for the sale to happen. The conversation could have been with sales copy on a website. It could have been with a friend who referred them. It could have been with a testimonial they saw somewhere. Whatever it is, there is a conversation, a dialogue that occurs before every sale. And the sales that are happening right now in your business are happening because of the conversations that are occurring. If you can introduce more conversations, you will introduce more sales, which primarily because you're already covering all your expenses with your existing sales will be mostly profit. So there you go. So let's look at an automated conversation, because this is one of the most effective ways to open the door for texting and to get people to give you their mobile phone number. So if we look right here, I'm asking people in this scenario I'm giving you here, which is one that we've been using to build our business for the last 4 years. We're asking them to text the keyword demo. Okay. So when they text the keyword demo, what do I know at that point? Well, I know that they probably have visited my website, because that's the predominant place where I have this keyword and phone number. I know that they're interested in seeing how our texting application works. I have their cell phone number, and I got all that from just one word being texted to there. And so with their cell phone number, what can I do? Well, because they texted me, and I'm going to ask them to actually text me some more, I'm probably going to be able to text them. I'm going to be able to call them because I have a cell phone number. I also can remarket to them because cell phone numbers match at like an 85 to 90% rate on all of the ad platforms, because cell phone numbers are used for security. So they kind of make it look like the security is the big deal, but the big deal is they want to get mobile phone numbers, because they know everybody has one mobile phone number and 10 email addresses. And so they're looking for the most unique way to identify an individual, because they can use that across all their networks to be able to keep things consistent, because there's a bunch of device migration that happens when people go from one place to another on platforms. And so the advertisers know mobile phone, most unique thing, that's what they want. So they all have them. And so when you have a cell phone number, you can remarket to people as well. So all that happened, and all they did was text demo. If they didn't do anything else. So I send them a text message right back after I apply a tag and create a contact and CRM. So I've done all that. Now, okay, that's great. I've got all this data, and all they did is text me one word. They also opened the door to texting, and they've really kind of only turned the handle. In order for me to fully open the door, I want to have some sort of dialogue going on with them. And this is where I use automated to do this, because this is kind of monotonous stuff. I'm going to do the same thing every time in this first few steps because I'm trying to establish, the connection, right? So the first message that I send out is a text message. This is a plain text message. You'll notice that the next two messages I send out have either some sort of media or a contact card attached to them. Those go through a different channel on the carrier networks than the simple plain text message. The plain text message goes through a very fast network. In fact, when people text demo, almost before they realize that the text message has been sent, a response will normally come back with that text. Now, some people find that a little disconcerting that are users, but they don't recognize is that's really critical. And the reason that's so critical is because when people do things that they've never done before, they want reassurance that they've done the right thing. And so when someone texts in that key word, getting a response back very quickly is reassuring to them because it tells them, I did the right thing because this looks like this is in response to what I just sent. So that speed is actually really important on that first step. And so that's why I'll never put an MMS on the first step of an automated conversation. And I really encourage you not to do it either, because it creates too big of a delay to give them the positive reinforcement. And so they'll end up trying to text the keyword again, stuff like that. So do it, plain text, first part, because it's a super fast pipeline and they'll get the message fairly quickly for the most part. So in this message, you'll notice I'm confirming that what they did was what they thought they were going to do. And I asked them to reply with their name. And you'll notice I don't say first name or full name or anything like that. I just say name because I want them to respond however they want. Software like Fix Your Funnel will handle if they send first name or first and last name. That's fine. But I just ask for the name. And then I make a promise. And so what I'm trying to do is use curiosity in my case. With a demo, that's something you may want to do. And you guys can do demos even though you're not demonstrating maybe the texting. You could be demonstrating something else through a texting conversation. That's fine. But in that case, that's what I'm doing. And then I set some expectations. I say it might take a few seconds. And that's because I know I'm going to send MMS or multimedia message. Multimedia actually goes through the data network. And because of that, it takes a little bit longer. It can take anywhere from like 5 seconds to a minute for that next message to go out because it has media attached. But why am I wasting that much time? Why would I do that? That's a question you guys may be asking yourself. And the reason I do that is because I am trying to get a contact card on their phone as quickly as possible. And this is introducing that tsunami I was talking about earlier that's coming for people that make phone calls to warm leads in order to get them to become customers. In my initial interaction with somebody, I would like to give them my contact card so that they can have my contact information so they can get a hold of me however they want, okay? So I'm doing that and I'm saying, hey, save the contact card to your phone and then reply with your email. Now, why would I want my contact card on their phone? And then, I do another set of expectations, but why would I want my contact card saved to their phone? And why would you want to do the exact same? Well, in iOS 13, now granted, that's not everybody, right? We just already established earlier on, that's only half of the population, and maybe it skews slightly towards the more fluent, but it's only half of the user base. Well, in iOS 13, and by the way, what happens with iPhone, if you're an Android user, you may not be familiar with this, but with iPhone, when a new version of iOS is released, the adoption is quick and complete very quickly. So what that means is almost everybody moves to the new version, and they move to it pretty quick. Within a month or so of it being released, they get to about 85% are adopted or whatever. So it's pretty quick. Well, in iOS 13, there's going to be a new feature, and this feature is going to be very welcomed by a lot of people because of the abuse that's been happening with phone robocalls. So because making a phone call has been facilitated by code for the last decade, what's happened is it's gotten out of control with scammers. And so everybody knows that you get 30 calls a week at least from unknown numbers that you don't recognize. It's a number showing up, it's got the city and state and all that, but you don't know who that is. And so with iOS 13, there is a feature that's going to become very popular, and that is you're going to turn a switch on, and if someone is not in a contact in your contact book on your phone, the call will go straight to voicemail. It won't even ring. It won't do anything. You'll just get a little notification that you got a new voicemail, but that's it. It's not going to bother you at all. And guess how many people are going to love this feature and implement it immediately? And guess what happens if you call warm prospects who have not added your contact information to their phone? They won't even see it. And so you go, wow, seems like our voicemail rate's really gone up. And that's going to be why, because you are not even getting a chance to ring their phone. So this is a huge tsunami. It's going to hit a ton of businesses like a pile of bricks, and they're just going to crumple, and they're not going to know what happened, and they're going to wish that they had paid attention to something like this. So I would just say this: if you guys know anybody that runs a business that depends on calling warm leads, cold callers, we won't worry about them. But if any of you know a business that depends on calling warm leads, you need to tell them and teach them what you're learning today. If you care about them, if you don't like them, you hate their guts or whatever, then fine, just let it hit them. But if you know anybody you care about, please, you need to inform them, because this is going to come really soon. iOS 13 is hitting at the end of the year, I think in the fall. And when that hits, they're not even going to know what hit them. It's just going to be like that. And all of a sudden, nobody's answering the phone anymore. And the reason will be because they didn't even see it ring. It's going to be beautiful for the rest of us, because we won't have to worry about those calls that come in all the time that we're not sure who they are. But for people trying to get a hold of people that aren't in your contact book, it's game over. And so it's going to make texting even more powerful, which will be good for all of us because we're all understanding the things we're talking about today. But it's going to make things really tough. So there's going to be a shakeup coming. It's going to be kind of interesting to see how it all falls out. But now you've been warned, and if that's you, you need to get that contact card on their phone installed. And you got to be thinking, and this is the real challenge of marketing and sales, is you have to think strategically. And anytime you spend thinking strategically is some of the most valuable time that you have. A lot of people like to think about being busy. Oh, I got to write email, I got to create a new campaign, I got to do this, got to do that. And then you got to fulfill on the promises you made. So you got to actually do whatever it is you sold, and you deliver that and all that. But any moment that you can take, and that's why things like this training that you're on are so important, is because they give you a chance to think strategically. You need to think strategically about what compelling reason can I give to get somebody to install my contact card on their phone. That's going to be a pretty big thing going forward, from my view. I've only been doing this for a little while, but that's my perspective. The other thing that's happening in this automated conversation is I'm collecting contact information. That's getting added into a contact record. And in each step, I can be applying tags. For me, I like to apply a tag right at when they text in the keyword, so I have context for that person. It'll allow me to slice and dice my list later to be able to better understand who's in it, how did they get there, that kind of thing. But the other place that I would like to apply a tag is after the email. Now, one of the neat things about these automated conversations, especially with Fix Your Funnel, is that I can take contact information I've gathered at earlier steps and insert it immediately right there. So it may not actually even be in my CRM yet, but I've got it available right into the text message conversation. And so personalizing that can be a real powerful way to keep people's attention and make it feel intimate the way it needs to, because that's the nature of texting. You'll notice also I'm using a personalization in a dynamic image. In this case, I'm using Nifty Images. And so I put the name of the prospect into the image. My name's Ryan, so it can be confusing looking at it. But I put the right in there, and then what happens is I really capture their attention. Now, because there's a slight delay with MMS, I want to be pulling them back into the conversation. Now, if you've already had a conversation with somebody before, you know that they're in your database, you might choose to go all text just for speed, and that has benefits as well. But getting the contact card is a new goal that you're going to want to be thinking about going forward. Okay. So again, I apply the tag after I get each bit of information if I want. I don't normally apply a tag after I get their name, but I will always apply a tag after I get their email address, because usually there's some implied reason for why I need their email address. And so I wanted to be able to use that tag to then start some automation. The other thing is it tells me something, and I can use that tag for reports. So I use Graphly for looking at data visually. And so I will look at how are people flowing through the conversation? And seeing that tag either at every step or at key steps gives me some indication of how effective is my conversation, how compelling is my reason for them to continue. Now, the other benefit that you're getting here when you're attaching multimedia, and unfortunately that's not available outside of the United States and Canada yet, but the other benefit is a text message in and of itself is 160 characters. So it's good because it compresses your verbiage so you stay right to the point, which is good because you want it to be clear. So you got to think about how can it be clear and right to the point. But one of the benefits of doing multimedia is you are allowed up to 1,600 characters in a single message. And so you can do a little bit more. One of the things that I will point out in these two messages I have that have media attached to them is the first one has something that looks a little bit like what I call a word wall. So you're going to forget everything that your English teacher taught you in high school or college. You're going to drop that out. You're not going to worry about what a proper paragraph should be. When it comes to marketing, in particular in sending a text message, I don't want word walls, which means I'll look and see, is this going to be more than 3 lines? If it's more than 3 lines, generally speaking, I like to break that up some way. Sometimes, it's tough because I have a long run-on sentence, but generally speaking, I like to break it up so that there's no more than 3 lines. You see that I did that successfully in the bottom text message. And so this is a good contrast. You can see how it's maybe a little more intimidating for the mind at a very, very subtle level to have the longer 6-line paragraph that you see in the top message versus the 3 lines that you see in the bottom. So break up your message. You can do that by holding Shift or Command or whatever it is. On a PC, I can't remember what it is, but on the Mac, I hit Shift Return. So whatever is your soft return, hit the soft return, give yourself a couple lines, and that will make it so that you don't provide these word walls. If you do utilize the text message with multimedia and go a little longer than 160 characters. I still don't want to write a whole novel because nobody wants to read a novel in text message. Just for the most part, they don't. They may when they get into live chat, but not in this automated stuff. Not in your campaign-based messages. Keep it pretty tight. So, in this one, I'm kind of doing a little introduction. I'm just talking about how it's kind of fancy or whatever. And then I do 2 things here. The first thing is I have a link that's a trackable link. In this case, I'm going to a survey. With Fix Your Funnel, we have mobile surveys. It's a really great way to extract some more information from a prospect, but also introduce questions that change their mind. So I like to do that. And then the final and most important part is this why did you question. You'll see I followed the formula. I add the BTW, or by the way, just to soften the question a little bit. And that's kind of a good technique as well for making sure that you're not being perceived as too abrupt. By the way kind of softens every question. You should try that. If I really stole that from Columbo, but you could try it anywhere. You just say, oh, by the way, and then ask some really bold questions, see how it works. But with the by the way, why did you? I've softened the question. I'm asking a fairly direct question. Why did you take the demo to our number today? That is a great way then to start a conversation. Not all people who receive this text message will respond. But those that do are those who I know are most ready to start taking action towards making a buying decision. And so that's why you always want to ask that question at the end of an automated conversation. Now with something like Fix Your Funnel, as soon as they respond after an automated conversation, then it segues directly into live messaging, which means you'll get a push notification if you've got the smartphone app installed, or you'll get a notification if you're on the desktop and logged in, and then you can just carry out, pick up from there live with the conversation, and you'll have some context as well. Okay, so that's automated conversations. I wanted to show you what this looks like in Fix Your Funnel if you hadn't seen it before, just because you can see it's really simple. None of this is overwhelming. I'm just having to think through what a conversation might be, and it's fantastic. So that's the good part. It's really easy to set up. It's really easy to do. You can see in this case, I actually did apply I apply a tag right after I gather the name as well as the email. So I've got the full funnel. When I look at it in Graphly, I can look at a funnel chart of tags and see, okay, how many people texted this and this and this. And if I don't see pretty close to 100% going all the way through the conversation, that's a good indicator for me to go and look at the conversation and see where is it breaking down, Where should I make it more compelling? Where should I wordsmith a little bit, maybe reduce what I'm putting in the text message to make it a little more potent? So that's what I recommend for you as well. Now, this opens up texting at a psychological level, because now the person has had a back and forth interaction beyond just one text message. So I like to go 3 steps in general. I don't like to go longer than 3. I've seen people go 10 steps. I don't like that personally, because I don't like machines that much. I know it's funny because I run a software companies, but I just don't want to interact with machines that much. A little bit up front, I understand, because it's consistent and all that. But beyond that, I really don't want to put someone through all of that. Just like you don't want to go through a 10-step phone tree, you really don't want more than 3 steps of texting. I like 3 steps because it's the kind of the sweet spot. It lets me gather the information I want, which is usually the name and the email, because I already got the phone number, I have context. So it's name, email, and then beyond that, I really want to start getting into conversation with them. So I might let them go take a survey if that's easier for them. I'll ask the question. If they take the survey and answer the question, trifecta. I know I've got someone who's really interested, and that tells my team we need to have a good conversation with this person because they're trying to make a decision. Okay, and so you can use the same approach. So 3 is the sweet spot. Keep it there, and then the person will understand, oh, I can text, especially if you have the open-ended question, conversation start a question at the end, okay? And this is the big secret. Texting is all about conversation. It is not about speaking at people. Annoying marketers speak at contacts. And if you've fallen into this, it's probably by accident. You need to be aware of it. It is super annoying to be spoken at. If you don't believe me, then go talk to somebody that you care about, but don't listen to them. You know, just talk at them. And then when they try and respond, turn around and walk away and see how good that works out. It's not going to work out well at all. So don't be annoying. Don't speak at people. You want to be engaging with people, okay? Now, this I alluded to a little bit earlier. I said that most of your sales, if you're not having conversations right now, if you're not engaging people in texting conversations, you've just been using it to speak at people, most of your sales have just been happening because you have no question sales. Those are people who are going to buy in spite of you, not because of you. And you may think, no, it's because my webinar is so compelling, or this or that. Now, they probably were going to buy anyway. That's kind of the nature of the people that buy at that level. Most people, though, they are one question away from buying. So they have one question, they have one concern, and if they could just get that resolved, then they're going to buy. But what keeps them from that is they don't have a really great way to do it. And if you start asking open-ended conversations, trying to engage people in conversation, they will feel comfortable. They will ask the question. They will present the concern. You can address it. You can answer it. And you're going to see your sales go up. So there's a little formula. The more conversations you have, the more sales you have, the more profit. So that is a formula you need to remember, because that is the truth. That is how business works. And where we see people double their sales in like months because they start implementing these strategies, it's simply because they start having more conversations. And if you're generating any leads at all, the common mistake that people make is, oh, I just need to generate more leads. And the real truth is you need to actually address how you can get to have more conversations with the leads you have. Then if you get more leads, it will equate to more sales, and you'll be more effective overall, and you'll have more profit. And guess what? When you have profit and money's flowing and leads are flowing, business is fun. It's not a chore anymore. It's fun. And so that's what I want to get you to. So this other thing that is going to be tough, and this is why you want to get the V-Card installed with what's coming, is when you call somebody, the most common reason that people don't answer the phone is not because they're not interested. It's because they don't recognize the number. This is why, and it's interesting because you can see, why did Apple think it was necessary to add a feature to their phone that would block calls from people who are not in your contact book? It's obviously because people are not recognizing phone numbers and they're finding it annoying because they don't know who's calling them. They don't want to take the risk of getting on the phone. I think what most people underestimate is the energy that it takes to be on the phone with somebody you do not know. And sometimes even the people you know, right? So it takes a lot of energy for people to get on the phone for the most part. And because of that, anything they can do to avoid it is being done. So the most common reason people don't answer your phone when you're calling warm leads is because they don't recognize your number. So this is how you will quadruple the number of people that will actually get on the phone with you when you call. So if you're calling 100 people and you can only get 4, if you use this technique, you'll get 16. That's my guess for you. That's at least how it worked out for us. So the first part of this is you're going to identify who you are. This can run against the grain of a lot of salespeople because they kind of feel like stealth is their benefactor, and that if they're stealthy, they'll be able to get someone on the phone and then get them into a conversation and sell them. But the truth is, if you identify who you are, your chances for actually getting them on the phone will quadruple. The next thing you do is identify exactly why you are calling. Look, as hard as it is to do sales, it's even harder to get on the phone with somebody who does not want to be talking to you at that moment. So identifying who you are and why you're calling, and again, this presupposes that you open the door to texting in the first place, which is the best. If you did it right, if you did it with a keyword, that's the best way to get a legit phone number that is actually connected to a person. But if you did all that, you want to identify who you are and why you're calling. What will happen is this. The most common change that you'll recognize if you haven't been doing this before is you will get a text back of people rescheduling. I'm sorry, I'm in a meeting. I'm not available right now. Can we talk later? Can you call me at 4? You'll get that like crazy. You'll go, wow, that's amazing. I love that. And the reason you do is because as a salesperson, all the salesperson needs to have is conversations. The more conversations a salesperson has, more profits. That's it. It's a simple equation. The next most common thing, well, people will actually answer. Now, this may be challenged slightly if we don't get into their contact book when that new update comes out. And believe me, if Android doesn't already have that, and they may because they sometimes get ahead of Apple and sometimes Apple gets ahead of Android. If they don't already have that feature, it will be coming shortly after Apple releases it because nobody likes getting all the robocalls. But the next most common thing that happens right now is that people will just answer. And they'll say, yeah, glad you texted me. I wouldn't have answered normally. I can't tell you how many times our sales guys started hearing that once we started doing this. The next thing that will happen is they don't answer. Truth of the matter is some people really aren't interested enough to want to have a phone conversation with you. And by identifying yourself, it gives them a chance to say that, then they'll say it by just not answering. And then if you're really lucky, you'll have some of the people who will actually text you and say, I'm not interested. Well, that's fantastic because the last thing that you want a salesperson to do, which is one of your most expensive resources, is wasting time on people who weren't interested anyway. Now, they may become interested down the road if our marketing is able to get into their hands and they're actually able to consume our message and we change the way they see the world and they start making different decisions. But at that moment, if they say, hey, I'm not interested, they're not interested. Great, take them off the list. Don't call them anymore. It means your sales guy can focus more on things that are actually effective instead of things that are not. That's how you quadruple your phone call answer rate. But the biggest secret of texting, I already alluded to it, so the suspense is all gone, is live texting. And so if you're not engaging in live texting, you are leaving all the money on the table. Now, some people will kick back at this and they'll go, I don't have time to answer. I won't be able to deal with all. Look, if you get so many responses to open-ended questions that you can't handle them all, and you ought to be making a bunch more money, and you ought to be able to afford people that can start handling all those questions. If not, then that means you're just less effective in handling conversation, and that can be trained. That can be learned. There are a million sales professional trainers out there. If you need help, you can contact us. We can look at it and give you help. But that's the least of your worries. If you start getting inundated with conversations, and you're still not happy about it, there's a couple things I could see that are happening. One, your business model sucks, and that means it's just all on your shoulders, and that would be terrible. And if that's the case, that can be adjusted, so that can be fixed. That's not the end of the world. Your math sucks. Well, that can also be fixed. If the math in your business is so terrible that it doesn't make sense for you to talk to people, that can be fixed. And you should fix that, because as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I understand, you only get one life on this planet, and that life, it does require work. But if you're going to work, you might as well do something that's going to be profitable for you. if you're going to put all the effort, if you're here actually listening to this, that says a whole lot about you. It says that you're actually thinking about the things that are actually going to make a difference in your business. And so if you're doing that, let's get your business model right. Let's get your math right. Let's have you working with people that you actually enjoy working with. And if we do those things, well, this texting stuff, this just facilitates that being effective and powerful and successful. So you want to go to live texting. If there's anything that's holding you back, I won't say your name. You can do it anonymously to me. Just chat. Say, here's my concern about going with live texting. Here's my concern about that. And we'll address it. I'll help you get through it, because if we can get you through that, that's a big hurdle that's keeping you back from having success. Now, if you have any friends, they're in business and they're doing texting and they're doing it the wrong way, and I'm going to get into this in the Q&A. That way people that need to go can go. I'll help you. I'll help you get through that, and that way you can move on. Because if you have friends that are struggling with this and they're just using text like email, if you can help them fix that, they're going to be successful too. They're going to love you. If I've had friends that have changed my life forever because they just cared enough to teach me some stuff about business I didn't understand. They're my business friends, right? Hopefully you have some business friends. So if you have a friend that you need to teach this stuff, teach them the stuff so that they can avoid the problems. They can actually be successful. But this right here, live texting, is the number one secret. You need push notifications for this to be really effective, which means you have to have a good smartphone app, a web phone app. And that's, I will admit, our old Fix Your Funnel app kind of sucks a little bit, but that's why we spent a lot of money to get the new one. iOS is out, Android's in development. So if you don't have the new Android app, if you're with Fix Your Funnel, you'll want to get it. It is phenomenal. Everything's faster, works great, doesn't crash on you. And the Android app will be there soon. We're making some changes to the existing Android app as the new app's being developed that will improve phone calls too, because we discovered there's a way that we can make those even better. So at any rate, make sure live texting is part of it. Ask open-ended questions. Make sure that you're engaging with customers through text, because that's the big secret. So I'm not going to go through these detail by detail because we're at an hour. I went a little long on some stuff. But we covered all of this. If you have any questions, you can ask them. At the top of the screen, you'll notice I have the Learn 949-835-5300. If you text Learn to that number, that's just going to give you a digital and an audio copy of my book, The Messaging Connection. So if you don't already have it, or if you have the physical copy but you would like the audio copy, I know I like to listen to books. You can listen to me speak for 3 hours as I read the book. But that will give you some of the foundational principles that guide what we talked about today. So if you want to go a little deeper into this topic, see some other examples and stuff like that, you can do that. And again, I already know who all of you are because you're on the webinar, so that means you had to register. But that's just so that you can get to it easily. Okay.